Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a little story time video. I feel like I really needed to talk about this before I can move on and post what is going on with our lives now and the changes and stuff that we've had. But as you guys could see from the title of the video, this is going to be a story time on my labor and delivery and postpartum story slash journey that we went through. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because I've watched so many labor delivery vlogs and just stories about labor and postpartum and stuff like that, and what I went through, I feel like I've never heard of anybody go through this. So I wanted to share my experience because never did I think that what I went through was even a possibility after having a baby. Now, I didn't vlog our stay at the hospital as much. I have little clips here and there, but after I had the baby and once we were in postpartum, at about 7:30 in the morning, my nurse comes in. She's super nice, but they help you go to the bathroom, obviously. And I do have like this big old diaper on, and I go to the bathroom, and I always thought that when you have a baby, like, you know, they say you bleed for a few weeks. I thought that you bled like if you were on your period. So when I went to the bathroom at 7:30 in the morning with the help with the nurse, I sat on the toilet and literally, like, there was so much blood gushing out. And I was scared and I was like, is this normal? And she was like, yeah, you just had a baby. This is super normal. And I was like, okay. That was that. I went into bed, and by 9 o'clock I had to go to the bathroom again. So 9 a.m. and I go to stand up from my hospital bed. As soon as I stand up, I feel like so much like warmness coming down, and I look down and you can hear the splatters on the floor. But I probably had it, I felt like I had a bucket of full of blood just dropped under, and I had blood gushing down my legs, which was really scary. And I told Danny. He comes, and I called the nurse. I was like, let me call the nurse because this does not seem normal. Like, you're not supposed to bleed that much, you know. I'm expecting like period bleedings, you know. So Danny starts cleaning it up, and the nurse comes in. And she's like, I told her, I was like, I'm so sorry I made a mess, but I went to go to the bathroom and everything just, like, I had so much blood leaking. And so she goes to the bathroom with me, and I keep asking her, I'm like, is this okay? Like, is this normal? And she's like, yeah. She's like, you just had a baby. This is super normal. So when I was going to the bathroom, obviously there was like blood clots coming out, or like clots. You know, they were coming out, so they were in the toilet, and she helped me change and everything. I got back into bed, and then I want to say within like 30 minutes to an hour, a few more nurses come in and they check me, and they check my pad, obviously, because I had like they had to change my diaper again, and it was like already full of blood, and I had like blood clots in there. So at first I was like, is everything okay, you know, because she had told me everything was fine. And then she brings in someone else, and they're like, yeah, they're like, we're just checking to make sure that you have some blood clots, and they're pretty big, so we're just making sure that it's not, you know, part of your placenta that was left in there. We want to make sure that everything's coming out, because that you're bleeding a lot for, you know, after having the baby. So I was like, okay. So I started kind of getting like worried a little bit, not too serious yet. But then more doctors started coming in, and they started looking, and TMI, but obviously, like, they took everything off and they started looking down there, and they were like, why are you bleeding so much? Like, it was starting to get really concerning. And then all of a sudden, like, we had 6 nurses up in there, and they were calling for the doctors. And I started getting worried because nobody was saying anything to us. It was just me and Danny and the baby in the room. And they start, like, they're all super nice, and I kept asking, is everything okay? And you know when, like, they tell you, like, yeah, it's fine, but you could see it in their faces, like, they use like their codes and their languages to kind of like make sure that you're okay. but they basically were like, you're bleeding too much. They started calling different doctors, so 3 different doctors came in, and then they finally oh no, a doctor came in, and then he was like, they pushed on my stomach again. They're like, maybe it's your placenta that's still left in there, and we're trying to get all those clots out. So then they did that, and then they monitored me for a few hours again, and then I was still bleeding a lot. So then they called another doctor. It was like, what do you guys need? And the nurses, they mentioned like my case and stuff, everything that's going on. They're like, what do you want us to do? And they mentioned the word hemorrhage. And so when I heard the word hemorrhage, I started freaking out, because the word hemorrhage is really scary. That obviously means that there's a lot of blood. People can die from having a hemorrhage. So the doctor basically said like, oh, okay, I'll be there in just a minute. Danny literally next to me on the side of the bed the whole time. Again, at this time, they had been pressing on my stomach to try to get all the blood clots out, so I was having so much pain. They kept looking down there and like making sure that, you know, what else is going on. So come to find out, they were like, maybe you're having excess bleeding because there might have been a tear in the stitch from having the 2nd-degree tear. So what they ended up doing is they ended up one of the doctors, he basically put on like a glove, and he was like, this is not going to feel good, but we have to make sure that all the blood clots are out. So he literally had to like go in there and like literally like grab everything out, which was super painful. I mean, you can only imagine, you just pushed a baby out hours ago, so you're like in pain down there, right? And now having to have somebody go in there and like have them push on your stomach and scoop everything out. They ended up taking out a lot of blood clots. Now, a few hours later, that still didn't help, you know. They kept saying that my uterus was firm, so like they weren't sure why I kept bleeding. Then when my doctor finally came in, he was like, we have to do like what's called a packing measure. So it's literally like a piece of cloth that's like this long, but they have to like put it in there and like kind of scrunch it all up. So it's basically like you have a huge tampon, but it's like a piece of cloth, and then it has a string hanging out obviously at the bottom. So they ended up putting that in, which hurt again super bad because I was already super swollen. So they ended up doing that, and they're like, you're gonna have to have this for a few hours. And usually when you apply pressure to like a cut or anything, you know that it stops the bleeding. A few hours later, they come to check me, and again, like, I had a lot of bleeding still, and I didn't know like what was happening. And so all the nurses came back in again. It's like a small room with like 6 nurses, and then like doctors coming in and out. So I had told Danny, they kept asking like different doctors like, what do we do? And the whole time I had Danny next to me. The whole time I have Danny next to me, and he has the baby next to him. And I looked at him because he was holding my hand. I told him, I was like, I'm not gonna make. And he's like, don't say that. He's like, don't say that. You're gonna be fine. Again, this is literally how I felt because I've never heard of this happening, and just how I was feeling. I was just so drained and like in so much pain that I told him, I'm like, I'm not gonna make it. And I could see like the fear in his eyes, but the whole time like he was so strong. He wasn't crying whatsoever, and he kept saying, don't say that, don't say that. I literally looked at him and I was like, take care of her. I was like, take care of the baby. That the doctor ends up coming in. The doctors and stuff ended up telling Danny to go to the hallway because the room was so small and there were so many people in there. So I was like, it's okay, just go to the hallway, you know. So the doctors come in, they basically insert the packing, and they let me be there for a few hours. they would come check me every once in a while, and I was still bleeding a lot. And then I told the nurse that I had to go to the bathroom. She helped me go to the bathroom. Everything was fine. And then about an hour later, I had to go to the bathroom again, and I call her in because I needed help to go to the bathroom. And I call her in, and she's like, "You just went an hour ago." And I was like, "I know, but I feel like I really have to go to the bathroom again." And this was just like, I just had to pee. So she brings in like a monitor to check how much fluid was in my, I don't know, your pee bag. I don't know what you call that. But she checked, and she's like, "Your bag is like 99% full. Like, why are you just went pee, so why are you already, your bladder's already full." So then she starts calling more people in, and basically they start checking, and they come to realization that the reason why I was bleeding so much is because my bladder, something with my bladder was not being released, so it was causing tension against like where my stitches were. I don't know, something like is more doctors came in, and they were like, "We have to place a catheter so your fluid, your bladder can just release on its own." Basically, they said that they had to place a catheter into, I don't know what the term is, but where we pee out of, they had to place in a catheter, which is like probably like a tube. That way it can release into a bag. That way it can just start releasing, and I don't retain any of it in my body. So again, I'm super swollen down there. I have stitches. I have that packing in there, and it was just so painful, but they couldn't even find where to insert the catheter because I was super swollen, and then to top it off, the packing was in the way of them seeing where to insert it. So that was like a whole thing. They tried to insert it like 3 different times, and it hurt so bad, like so bad. They ended up stopping, and they called in like a pain medication so I can take, because at this point I hadn't taken any like all day. And then they got some like numbing stuff for down there because it was honestly so painful. I want to say the pain of that second day and everything that I was going through was worse than having the actual baby and pushing the baby out. So they ended up doing that. The nurse came in a few hours later. Once they got the numbing stuff, they were like, "Okay, we're gonna apply the numbing, that way it's easier for us to insert it." And still, like when they finally went to go in to do it, they were like, "Okay," like they looked down there and stuff, and they're like, "We're not gonna try to do this again. Let's just call the doctor and see what he thinks, because we don't want to put you through more pain." So they called the doctor, and the doctor basically said, "We have to do this. This is the only way that she's gonna get better." And I kept thinking, like, the only thing, I'm like, "Can you guys just do surgery? Because at this point I can't be awake and having them to do all of this, you know?" I was like, what if none of this works? And I was just thinking, if I'm put to sleep, I won't feel anything. Like, I was going through so much pain. The doctor basically says, like, "No, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna insert it." And he basically ordered a smaller catheter tube to fit. So he comes in about an hour later, and he was like, honestly, I love him. He was like super nice and so calming, but he was like, "I'm sorry, this is gonna hurt, but it's gonna be super quick." And he honestly inserted it like within like less than a minute, and it was already in. And he was like, "You're gonna feel so much better after this." He's like, "We'll remove the packing in the morning, and the catheter also will be taken out in the morning." So that was kind of like the final thing to all of that. They still kept checking me to see if I was bleeding. My bleeding had definitely calmed down so much, which I was super like thankful for. But since they would still come in to check my bleeding every few hours, right before that doctor left that last time, I could see Danny like in the corner of the hallway, and he was sitting there with the baby. This is the part that's really hard, because I know the story might not seem like so much, but I literally, if you guys could see how much blood I was losing, it literally looked like somebody died on my bed. Like, that's how much blood there was. And until they could figure out why, it was just really scary. But I could see Danny in the hallway with the baby. And it just sucks because I couldn't be there with them. Every time that the doctors left, he would come back in and he would tell me, like, everything's gonna be fine, everything's gonna be fine. And I couldn't help but think that, like, I wasn't gonna make it through because of all the blood that I was losing. But once the doctor finally, everything was inserted, everything was fine, I heard him in the hallway while the nurses were still feeling, like, you know, making sure I was okay. I heard him, obviously he was giving our families updates on what was happening. But he was in the hallway and I could hear him talking on the phone with his mom. And he starts, like, I honestly don't even remember what he was telling her, but he starts crying. And I remember him saying, like, it's really hard to be going through this. And I just start breaking down crying in the room. And at this point, everything had calmed down. We already knew what was happening. It's just hard because I know he was trying to be strong also. By this time, it was like 4:30 and they came in to check and my bleeding had completely calmed down. I had no more blood clots coming out. My bleeding was normal at this point. It was like a regular period. That's what it's supposed to be like for, you know, for a few weeks. So everything, we just started getting like good signs after that. Like everything was just so much better. They ended up having to check my my iron levels because with all the blood that I lost a severe amount of blood. So they did come in to check me. One thing that I forgot to tell you guys that I didn't mention earlier, but when all the chaos was happening, when they mentioned the word hemorrhage and all that, when all the doctors came rushing in, they ended up hooking me up to another IV, which was like one right here, because in case I needed to go into emergency surgery, they had to have the IV ready to go. And since I already had one over here, they had to put in another one. So that was really scary. And I'm like, why are you guys doing another one? They're like, just in case, we just have to be ready. So again, I was not getting any answers because everything was just kind of like, they were playing it by ear also just to see like what was happening. And then they also at one point told me like, don't eat anything from here on out because in case you do have to go into surgery, we don't want that much food in your system, so just stop eating at this point. So that was scary because in the back of my mind, like, that just shows that like, okay, I might need surgery, like I might go into surgery. And again, that was scary because I was like, what if I go into surgery and I just don't make it out? So I just kept telling Danny, I'm like, I'm not gonna make it. And I think it really hurt him for me to say that because he kept telling me like, don't say that, we need you here. So that was really, really hard. And I just feel like that whole experience was so traumatizing to the both of us. But luckily, I didn't need surgery because the bleeding did stop completely. And they ended up, you know, everything was fine. Now, after 4:30 p.m., they did come in to check my blood, and I guess my results came back that I had really low iron. I had lost so much blood that my iron levels were completely, like, you could say, like, thrown out the window. So in order to have good iron, I believe you're supposed to be at a 12.0, I think it is, and above. So they checked me when I first came into the hospital, I believe, like before having the baby. I was at a 12.1. And then after all the blood I had lost because of that whole situation, I was down to a 7.0. So I had lost almost like half of that number. So what they told me was that I couldn't leave the hospital. At this point, I knew I wasn't going to leave the hospital anytime soon. but they were like Friday morning. I've been there since Wednesday. Baby was born Thursday at 2:25 in the morning. I went through all of that Thursday, through the whole day, and then they told me Thursday evening that before I could go home, I had to have 2 iron bags rushed through my IV lines, just so I can get my my iron to be, my hemoglobin levels to be a lot higher, because I had lost so much blood. So I basically had to get one on Friday and then one on Saturday morning before we could go home. Now, at this point, after having the baby, I honestly didn't get much time to even enjoy the baby, or I got to hold the baby a few times when they would leave, but I never really got to enjoy her or even like sleep, honestly, because I was able to feed her here and there. At this point, I'm okay. Friday morning, 7:30, the doctor comes in, they remove the packing from me, and they remove the catheter, and they checked me like an hour later, and I was fine. Like, my bleeding and everything looked normal. At this point, they had no more concerns with me because everything was looking so much better. Basically, the only thing that they told me was, you know, you just have to have these 2 iron fluid bags run through you before you can go home. So at that point, I was so much better. I did feel really weak because, again, I had lost so much blood, but at that point, I was fine. When they checked the baby Friday morning, they had told me that she had lost, so babies lose weight after they're born, but they don't want them to lose more than 10% of their birth weight. So she was born at 6.8 ounces, and they checked her Thursday. I don't even remember what time they checked her on Thursday, but she had lost like 5.5% of her birth weight. So they were like, that's fine, as long as it's not more than 8%, she's okay. Friday morning comes around, and she had lost I forgot the number, but it was like 8.8, I believe, percentage of her birth weight. So she had lost more weight that they had liked. So they couldn't, I was like obviously giving her, like I was like breastfeeding, but they didn't know if it was because I had lost so much like iron in me that maybe my milk didn't have, like, obviously I just had colostrum, I didn't have milk yet, but maybe because I had lost so much blood and all the vitamins or whatever, that she wasn't getting the nutrition that she needed. So they ended up telling me to give her formula, and of course we couldn't leave the hospital until her birth weight was back up. So then they ended up checking her again Friday evening, and she had lost, before they told me to give her formula, she had lost like 9.2 percentage of her birth weight. So she was weighing about 5.2 pounds at this point. And they told me, okay, you have to start giving her formula. I have to like basically breastfeed for a little bit and then give her formula to get her birth weight back up. So I did that, and then they were like, they ended up checking her Saturday morning, and her birth weight, they checked her Saturday morning, and the percentage got a lot better. I don't remember what it was, but I think it had gone down to like a 9.2. So from a 9.8, it went down to a 9.2. And we were kind of devastated because I was hoping that it had gone down a lot more, because I'm like, at this point we'll be able to go home by like Saturday midday if she's good. But it was still too high, and they were like, well, we'll check her this evening, and if she's good then you guys can go home. So Saturday around 4 p.m. they checked her, and it had gone back down to like an 8.1, so almost a 7%. So because they saw the progress in her gaining her weight back little by little, they actually let us go home Saturday night, which was so exciting because we had been there since Wednesday, and after everything that we went through, we were just ready to go home. So that's why we ended up being in the hospital for so many days. What do you think about it, babe?
I feel like it's hard to talk about it. I don't know.
What were you...
I feel like God puts us through moments like these. So not only does it make us stronger, but it brings us closer. I don't know. I've never been through anything like that.
Now that's in front of the camera.
We were trying to have a serious moment. It sucked.
Were you scared?
Yeah, I was really scared. Once that room filled up with all the nurses and doctors, it's like a lot is going through your head. You feel helpless.
Yeah.
It was just me and the baby. And she kept telling me to like step out, but...
Yeah. Danny was in the room most of the time, but he actually... I think once it got really full, you ended up having to go outside.
Yeah,
huh?
there was just too much going on in there.
Yeah.
The baby was fine. She
slept
She
the
just, like,
whole
slept the
day.
whole thing.
It was crazy because she did not like bother us whatsoever. Like she was just sleeping the whole time. But
I don't know. I feel like I show no emotion right now, but honestly, guys, like whenever I start thinking about it when I'm by myself, like I just...
we talk about it probably every day.
Yeah.
And Danny doesn't cry, but I cry about it every single day. But I think that day you saw a lot of people in the hallways, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And then what's crazy is the next day, was it Friday? When that lady came in the room?
So I was in the hallway when she was going through everything with Ixlani. And, you know, I was calling my mom and my mother-in-law just to let them know what was going on. I did start crying at a point. And then there was a cleaning lady. She was just like across the hallway from me. And she was staring at me, I could tell. But, you know, like, I don't like people seeing me cry, so...
Nala.
I kind of just like turned around. And then the next day she walks in. Happy lady, like, you guys... I get chills just thinking about her.
She's like a short, older lady. Very tiny. And she was coming in to
clean the room.
Yeah, take out the garbages and stuff.
I don't know, she brought so much peace to us.
But she looks at me and she looks at Danny and she was like, you look so much better. And she was like, I saw him in the hallway yesterday crying.
And then I was like, that was you?
And she literally was, she was like, you look so much, she's like, you look really good. She's like, and then when she told me that Danny was crying, I just started crying too, because I was just like, it was just a lot that we had gone through that day. But she was super nice, and she just had like a calming energy to her.
She was like, you guys are gonna be okay. And then she looked at Ixlani and she was like, she's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And
So
when she left the room, we were just like, she left so much peace. I don't know, like sometimes people bring you energy.
Like it was something that we had to hear in that moment, even though we were already at this point, we were okay. But she definitely gave us like a positive energy, and we just felt so much better after that. But yeah. Have you?
I definitely don't wish this upon my worst enemy or nobody to go through this. But if you do go through it, stay strong, stay positive. That's what I did the whole time.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about what was going on, and I would just tell her, don't worry. Worst case scenario is I'll freaking stab myself a needle into my arm and one into your arm, and I'll...
Oh yeah, to do a blood transfusion.
I'll give you my blood, even though if it's not magic blood. Yeah. I don't care.
I almost needed a blood transfusion. They weren't sure because I had lost so much blood.
It was a lot.
But luckily I didn't need one. I was really close to it though. So that would have kept us in the hospital a lot longer as well.
I'm not good with blood, but for some reason that day
Danny was like so good.
Okay.
But it was a lot of blood, huh?
Yeah.
Honestly, the whole experience was so traumatizing, and even the nurses were like, you're gonna be a one and done baby, like this is gonna be your only baby. They kept telling me like, I'm so sorry you're going through this, like I'm so sorry, you're probably so traumatized. But yeah guys, it was just a very scary experience. I've honestly never heard of anything like this happening to anybody. I basically was bleeding out and I didn't know why And it's just scary because now every time I talk about it with Danny, I get so emotional. He gets, he's been very supportive. I was so weak, and he was even like feeding me at the hospital. He was doing all the shifts with the baby, and because I couldn't do anything, he literally took on, like, he changed the baby's first diapers, he changed the baby's outfits, like, he fed me, like, literally spoon fed me. He helped me, like, shower, he helped me go to the bathroom. Like, he was literally the most, I couldn't have asked for a better husband. And for me to not even ask him to do any of these things, he didn't ask for help for anything. And it's surprising because he's never been around babies, and he was just doing, like, so good with the baby, like changing all of her diapers. Like, I honestly didn't change any diapers, like, the first 2 weeks. He would change all her diapers, he changed all her clothes. Nobody taught him how to do any of that, and he just took on that role so good. And I'm just so thankful because I was so weak. I could barely sit down. I could, it was really painful for me to, like, move around, but thankfully I'm doing so much better. I felt so much better probably 7 days later. I could finally sit down, and yeah, but I wouldn't change the experience for the world. I would do it all over again for my baby, because she is honestly the sweetest, the cutest little thing ever. And I just look at her every day, and I'm just so thankful that I'm able to be here with them too. But yeah, guys, I do think about this day. Honestly, I've thought about it every single day, and I cry about it every single day. And I think it's just gonna take time for me to get, like, I'm probably never gonna get over it, but it's gonna take time. And I have talked about it with several people, but this experience doesn't make me not want to have kids. I would definitely want to have more if I'm able to. But this experience would definitely be in the back of my mind. I wouldn't want this to happen again next time I have a baby. That's just the only scary part. But yeah, guys, that is my story. I hope I'm not scaring anybody. Everybody's stories are different, but I just wanted to kind of share my experience. So yeah.